built in the first place was because beneath this mantle of snow and ice lies fabulous mineral wealth, wealth that was used to fuel the Soviet economy. When the gulags were disbanded in the 50s, the mines were kept going by the long ruble. Wages here were up to 8 times those back west. But since the collapse of communism in the 80s, most of the mining villages in the area have closed, and their inhabitants moved elsewhere. Nezdaninskoye was an extreme example. In the 80s, it had a kindergarten, a school, a gym, a library, and even an airport. The post office was still being built when the state-owned mining company pulled the plug. It's a sad epitaph to Moscow's attempts to colonise Siberia. And I guess in this case, Siberia won. Or perhaps not, because some 30 people simply weren't prepared to leave. They've recently been thrown a lifeline by a Western company, who've stumped up the investment to reopen the mine, and are preparing to start operations again within 2 months. Chris Woods was born in Wales, but has spent most of his life looking after the electrical installations on mines in Australia. He's coming to the end of a 3-month shift, preparing the town to start up.
Used to be a nice place, I suppose.
He's got to bring the whole town back to life by resurrecting the entire electrical and heating infrastructure, which has been frozen solid since the summer. Once it's going, it can't be allowed to stop.
See, if the power stops, the pump stops. If the pump stops, the water stops. If the water stops, the heat stops. So it's depending on the temperature. You've got anywhere between, I think it's about 4 hours. 5 hours.
It's not actually very long, is it?
I mean, even help is still by air. It's still 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
It can be a bad place.
Yeah,
it can be
serious. I mean, I have this image of miners as being guys who work really hard, tough guys, and yet when they stop working, they play really hard. I mean, how do you play hard in a place like this?
Good question. If you can tell me, you'd take me there.
It had been good to share a beer or two, but next morning it was time to move on. In this climate, though, it's not just a question of switching on the electrical seat warmers. Diesel and hydraulic fluid cease to flow at around -50. Early morning ritual of fire on the truck routes of Siberia. Just to get the damn thing started every morning, you have to go through this warming up process of the axles and the wheel hubs to give it a kiss of life before you can go into action. Our trucks had spent the night in heated garages, so at least we hadn't had to light a fire beneath the diesel tanks. Normal practice if you're out in the open. As we left, I asked Andrei what Nezdaninskoye meant. He paused and then said, approximately, this word means unexpected. I wondered what more surprises were in store for me tomorrow when I reached Oymyakon, the coldest town on Earth. This was it, the final leg of my journey to the coldest town on Earth. We were entering the plateau dividing the Verkhoyansk mountains, through which we'd just driven, and the Cheskogo range to the east. Some 50 kilometres wide and 200 kilometres long, this huge valley has Oymyakon nestling at its heart. My first stop was at the monument in the centre of town. So this is it, we made it on the way.
Yeah.
Great. Oymyakon Holada.
Yeah. It means Oymyakon, pole of cold.
Pole of cold.
Right.
The coldest town on Earth, eh?
Yeah.
Who's this guy, Andrei?
His name Obuchev.
Obuchev.
He was a geographist.
A geographer?
Yeah, right,
Jolly
geographer.
Good. He was actually on station when the lowest temperature was recorded.
Yeah, right.
That map of the world leaves a bit to be desired. North America's all stringy, but Russia or Soviet Union, as it was, much, much larger.
Yeah.
Much more important, eh?
Right. Because we are proud.
Of course, of course.
It should be a lot more prominent. Yeah, sure. It is.
It was fantastic to be standing in the coldest town on Earth, but getting here was only half my mission. Discovering how the inhabitants coped with living in an average winter temperature colder than a domestic deep freeze was what I was interested in now. The family who had offered to put me up during my stay here consisted of Valeria, the matriarch, and her husband Alexei, who lived with their 3 sons, 1 daughter-in-law and 3 grandchildren in a snug wooden house in the centre of town. They invited us in for what was to be the first of many enormous meals comprised almost exclusively of horse meat in one form or another. It was a great spread at lunch today, a wide range of local delicacies, some of which were very good, others of which I'm glad I tried, but I don't think I'll try them again. The frozen horse's liver were a really nasty, slimy consistency and smelled terrible.
Yeah, and in England we tend to cook our liver.
What had surprised me about the town more than the raw horse liver was that it wasn't an industrial centre like Nezdaninskoy, where people came for the high wages. No, this was a thriving community of all but self-sufficient farmers who were living here because they always had, and they liked it. I couldn't quite believe the way in which life continued almost as normal at these temperatures. At the town school, for example, the children play outside all winter, though it must be said that it does shut down if there are 2 days in a row below -60. The crucial buffer between the townspeople and the cold was this Dickensian hand-fed power station that supplied hot water to every building on the ring main. But Nikolai, the station manager, was under pressure. Since the collapse of the Russian economy, deliveries of the state-provided coal have become unreliable. This year he was 30% short of his annual allowance. He'd been reduced to burning wood. And coal wasn't the only thing not getting through.
The problem is that we do not receive salaries.
And yet you continue working because this, in effect, is like the heart of Oymyakon, pumping and keeping the whole place alive and going.
I found it tough to imagine anyone in the West continuing to work when they hadn't been paid for 9 months. But then again, without heat, this town would cease to function within about 5 hours. Even the most mundane outdoor tasks are well-nigh impossible. Next morning, I took out my trusty all-weather mini meteorological station, but it wasn't designed for Siberia.
Basic temperature measurements in these temperatures is a horror story. And bloody wires get brittle when they get cold. Data recorders, temperature, highly temperature sensitive, so... and then the glasses go up, I can't actually see anything. The machine's going. Well, take your pick, I don't know what that's saying.
A few of the things I brought from England are equipped to deal with these sorts of temperatures. I mean, my glasses broke in the first day.
So it's -44.
My pens don't work.
The ink in the pen's frozen up.
So lots of things that I brought just are not equipped to deal with these sorts of temperatures.
Back to old technology. Pencil, that should work. Yes.
But what was amazing was that the people have adapted to this environment. Farmers can't spend all winter tucked up indoors. The stocky Yakut horses survived the temperature thanks to their extra thick coat and compact shape. But once every 2 months they had to be rounded up for de-icing. I joined Kolya, my host's son, because I wanted to see how long I could last outside.
His cheeks are very red. Is that frostbite?
Yes, frostbite.
May I look?
Please.
Gosh, it looks very painful, is it?
Oh,
No. It's about -42 here. How long do you think I will survive until I get frostbite? A weak Englishman.
If it's cold, -50, you may get frostbitten during an hour.
Okay. So -42, not cold, huh?
But until then,
Cold enough for me.
He gave me an hour at -50. I was wondering just how long I was going to last at -42. Collier asked me to get behind the herd and bring them into the corral behind him. His horse obeyed my instructions some of the time, but the herd seemed to be studiously ignoring me and headed off in search of new pastures. It was at this moment that Collier realised we would all be dead by the time I'd got the horses where they needed to go, and I was called in. From my point of view, not a moment too soon.
I lost communication with my toes extremely early on. My fingers are gone, these two particularly, holding the sodding reins. They're exposed a lot. And my nose, I don't know if it's still there. Yeah, I expect it is. Altogether, it's hard work, and I've only been out here for about half an hour, I suppose, so Christ knows how these guys spend 8 hours of the day out here. No thanks, not as a job. I'll stick to travel writing.
The de-icing process itself involved using a comb to brush out the snow and ice from the horse's coat. It gave me an opportunity to warm up a bit.
What's that, Andre?
You should do it harder.
Harder.
More.
Without doing this 2 or 3 times a winter, the snow and ice built up into a thick carapace on the horse's back that led to them catching pneumonia. So it was with a certain sense of achievement that I collapsed into bed that night. Not only had I helped ensure the health of my host's herd, but I'd also spent nearly 2 hours outside. Ever since I'd arrived in Oymyakon, I'd been dying to test the defining meteorological quirk that seals its fate as the coldest town on Earth. This valley doesn't adhere to one of the most standard principles of atmospheric physics, that as you go up, the temperature goes down. Since my portable Met station ceased to function below about -35, when I awoke that morning to a balmy -33, it was time to attempt a little hard meteorology.
So, the temperature here at the bottom of the hill is -32.7, 32.6 degrees Celsius.
Now, if the theory is right, it should get warmer as I walk up the hill. The only trouble is, I've got to walk up the bloody hill. -28.5. That's about 4 degrees warmer than at the bottom. The theory works.
This temperature inversion is the microclimatological reason this valley is so cold. In the same way that hot air rises, so cold air sinks, and the mountains and hills surrounding this valley trap that cold air like an undisturbed bowl of liquid nitrogen in the bottom of a deep freeze.
It's probably similar in other valleys in Siberia, but I don't really give a damn, because this place has the record. Oymyakon is the coldest town in the world. I can't quite believe I've made it.
To survive in the coldest town on Earth, you need a protein-rich diet to keep your body going, and this diet was beginning to have an extremely unwelcome physiological effect on me.
Until I got to the stage where I feel like there's like an entire horse inside me, and the problem is it's not coming out the other end. And it's not at all an attractive prospect when you're constipated to sit for a lengthy period in a small wooden box outside at -52, which is what it is this morning.